Hi again, everybody. Now we're going to talk about interviewing. There are some types and guidelines for good interviewing. So, first of all, this will be linked to an assignment that you will see on your Blackboard. What kinds of interviewees, what kinds of sources are out there? When we interview a person journalistically, sometimes it's hard to stop a person from talking. That type of interviewee is called rambling. We also call them, like generous or willing, talkative. The opposite of that would be a reluctant interviewee, someone who's really not willing to say much, and there might be different reasons for that. A person may be shy by nature, or a person may not have good information to share and not be willing to just say anything. The other reason could be that the person is hostile to you. So those are the two dimensions of the willingness or the reluctance to speak with you. In terms of their origins, there are official representatives of different organizations, agencies, so we call them official sources. And then, as opposed to that, we have real people. Not that the officials are unreal, but they're not affected as much as they are decision makers. A type of interviewing is vox pop, when you talk to a small group of people, or maybe a large group of people, one by one without mentioning their names, and edit them together to make, especially in broadcasting, to make a bouquet of voices to represent all the different views, perspectives on an issue. So vox pop does not necessarily require the identification of the source, whereas the official sources, they need to have their title. The real people in the street, they need to have their names, and in many cases, as in newspaper writing, their address, where they live. So in terms of technical execution, we have face-to-face interviews, which is a problem nowadays, as you know. We have phone interviews and we have online interviews, which would be very convenient nowadays. So the basic principles of good interviewing are: prepare very carefully, establish trust and rapport with your interviewee, ask only relevant questions, listen and watch very carefully. Another thing I would like to add is, don't tell them stories. When you're conducting an interview, it's not about you. So keep your questions and comments to a minimum. Identify yourself and your purpose before the interview. Make an appointment and announce your goals. Get the source's name with the correct spelling and pronunciation. Tell the source how much time you need from them so that you're not abusing their patience. Keep the interview brief and ask very specific questions that the source can answer. Don't ask generic questions. Don't tell them, start from the beginning and tell me everything as it was. That is especially a bad idea for broadcast, because then you have to edit all of that. Give them time to reply and don't push them. Don't rush them. If something is unclear or if something contains specific language, jargon, terminology, don't be afraid to ask, because you represent the public. And some journalists would even say, Jane Doe of my audience, in my audience, one of my readers may have a question about this term. Could you please explain it for them? And other things to do include read back the answers if you have any question, to clarify with the source. Did I get it right? Does it sound correct? Is this what you were saying? Insist on answers if the public has the right to know and the source is not willing to give you the answers. Tell them that the public would like to know. In many cases, you would be saying the public wants to hear your side of the story. Even if you're a reluctant person, that might have an effect on you. You might think that your side of the story needs to be heard. Avoid lecturing the source, sharing, oversharing, telling stories, arguing or debating. And also don't push them, don't encourage them, don't agree with them. Your only emotion is interest. If you're interviewing a person, the only permittable emotion or attitude is interest. I'm interested in your views. So if the person asks for non-attribution, that is anonymity, you just promise that, because if you're going to use the same source or similar sources in the future, it's a sure way of losing trust and never getting anything from people from that group. At the end, don't forget to ask about additional comments. If something you missed or something they thought about and never came to mention, just give them a moment to reflect and, give you something to conclude with. Usually people express their gratitude to this and that, I'm thankful that this source gave us a grant, etc. So those things you can dismiss. But if there is any important information that was not covered, you can also phrase it like this: did I forget to ask you anything important that we needed to discuss? And for that matter, never stop listening to the person, never stop taking notes. If you are recording, never stop recording, because you never know what will happen at the very end of your interview. So the other aspects of an interview, of course, the technical things, you need to bring batteries, you need to bring a power cord, you need to bring your recording device, a notepad, a pen, change for parking, those things. Nowadays, a lot of things are without cash, but think about the car keys, think about what can go wrong, what you need a backup for, especially when you're recording on a device. When you record on a dictaphone or an audio recorder, especially if it's also video recording, ask permission and get it on tape. Begin by saying, would it be all right if I recorded our conversation to use as my notes? Unless it's going on the air. Okay, so we'll talk more about this next time we meet. Thank you.